But I was not there. I was not there.
But the entire money was spent before it was brought here for approval.
We need to get input, aside from those who are in government, on how to manage this economy.
We need to do this quickly because you can see our people are running out of patience.
Mr. President, don't waste time. Please set up this committee to investigate this issue.
The report that I have here are in 4 sections. We have the executive summary. On the executive summary, I will make a very quick background report. The Nigerian economy is currently facing challenging times, largely caused by distortions resulting from major fiscal and monetary policy actions of previous governments, notably the huge direct lending to the federal government by the central bank to the tune of about 30 trillion, the operation of an opaque fuel subsidy regime, and a raft of interventions by the central bank which seemed not well targeted. The result has been rising inflation, especially food, and persistent naira depreciation. Expectedly, the ongoing efforts by the current administration to correct the anomalies of the past have come with some painful economic conditions which need to be ameliorated. In reaction to the current economic hardship Nigerians are going through, the Joint Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture and Appropriation held an interactive session with the key members of the federal government's economic management team. The aim was to ascertain the true state of affairs of the country's economy, the nature of the challenges and measures being put in place to address within the shortest possible time. What emerged from the interaction is the urgent need to bring down inflation, boost food production, and stabilize the economy through proper coordination of fiscal and monetary policies. On page 2, you have the introduction and list of attendees. About 35 senators attended the session, and from the economic team of the federal government, on page 3, we have the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. We also had the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, the Governor of Central Bank, Mr. Olayemi Kadoso, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank Economic Policy, Mr. Mohamed Sani Abdullahi. So page 4 gives a background to all of the conversations that ensued, and then the summary of the activities from the session. You will have it on page 5. And if I may summarize, the questions that were posed by the Joint Committee of the Senate, they are on page 6, and they centered around inflation and exchange rate related questions. To be specific, the key 5 points there, you have what specific measures have been put in place by the monetary authority to ensure price stability. 2, what has the economic management team done to improve FDI inflows in the country? 3, what efforts has the CBN made to strengthen the naira over the medium to the long term? 4, what are the consequences that the CBN have put in place for individuals with invalid FX claims? 5, what sustainable solution is the CBN seeking to neutralize the adverse effect of the 30 trillion outstanding ways and means that we have in the books of the CBN? On agriculture and food security, the related questions are as follows. 1, what is the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security doing to ensure stability of food products in the country? 2, how is the ministry protecting farmers across the country to ensure they have improved productivity? 3, what efforts are being made by the Ministry of Agriculture to support players in the agriculture value chain to drive growth in the sector. Now, direct questions to the CBN are as follows. 1, how does the CBN plan to support productive sectors of the economy? So on page 7, it continues on page 7. 2, what is the CBN doing to ensure collaboration with the federal government to tackle the economic issues in the country? 3, is the CBN looking to conduct forensic audit of FX allocations and transactions for past transactions between 2016 to 2022? Then, of course, we had general economic questions as well. 1, what actions are being taken by the monetary and fiscal authorities to ensure coordination of policy and activities? 2, the National Assembly approved about 500 billion naira for subsidy removal as palliatives. However, palliatives have not been distributed by the government. What is the economic management team doing about this? 3, what is the Minister of Finance doing to ensure coordination of economic programs embarked on by other ministries? The response from the economic management team, we have it on page 7, note 3, 2.1. It started with the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. In his presentation, the Minister of the Economy provided the following information on the plans and activities of the government to resolve the economic challenges facing the country. 1, he said in the short term, the administration is focused on inflation reduction and stability of foreign exchange rate. 2, measures are being taken by the government to boost oil and non-oil revenue. 3, the government is adopting technology to drive timely revenue collection. 4, the government is seeking ways to cut down on expenditures to reduce fiscal burden. 5, the government is ensuring that pain felt by the vulnerable and the poor in the short term is reduced to the barest minimum. So you have on page 8 the response of the Minister of Agriculture and as well as the response of the CBN governor. So I'll just go into the recommendations. So on page 10, you have the recommendations. In the light of the exhaustive deliberations and thorough examination of pertinent issues and presentations, the Senate Joint Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture and Appropriation presents the following recommendations. These recommendations are grounded in a comprehensive understanding of the issues at hand with due consideration given to the presentations, data analysis, and of course the goals of addressing the legacy challenges posed by insecurity, climate change, inadequate power supply, transport infrastructure, which all contribute to rising inflation in the country. And they are as follows. On page 11, 4.1, 1, arrest inflationary pressure through liquidity reduction. The government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligation of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement for over a period of 40 years. In addition, the CBN should put in place measures to ensure the repayment of various intervention programs by the beneficiaries after a thorough evaluation of their performance. This will help reduce money supply. Also, the quasi-fiscal measures totaling about 10 trillion, of which the anchor borrower program is a major part, should be further interrogated by the committee with a view to plugging loopholes in future development finance activities of the bank. B, on foreign exchange management, the committee commends the bank, that is the central bank, for some of the measures put in place to address exchange rate volatility and improve liquidity in the FX market. These include clearing outstanding valid obligations, introducing new operational mechanisms for BDCs and IMTOs, and enforcing the net open position limit. However, in order to ensure transparency and boost confidence in the market, there is need for the committee to further investigate the 2.4 billion forex transaction adjudged invalid out of the outstanding 7 billion obligations with a view to identifying culprits and meting out appropriate sanctions to serve as deterrent. Furthermore, on page 12, the committee needs to interrogate the sudden revision of the rate calculation methodology by the FMDQ on Monday, January 29, 2024, and the resultant sharp increase in the NAFEM rate, that's the foreign exchange market rate, from 891 naira to the dollar to 1,348.63, which significantly impacted the value of dollar-denominated obligations. This step is necessary in order to safeguard investment, protect jobs and economic agents in Nigeria with foreign currency exposure. C, fiscal discipline and expenditure reduction. Improve fiscal discipline by reducing government expenditure to lower fiscal deficits and promote fiscal sustainability. In this connection, exchange gains from naira depreciation should be used to wind down existing government deficits at all levels rather than continue to expand the size of the budget. D, rapid social safety net interventions. Provide interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of the economic challenges. E, compliance and transparency of economic actions. The CBN should ensure compliance with the provisions of the Act in respect of ways and means and accountability through timely submission of its budget, financial statements, and reports of its activities to the President and the National Assembly as stipulated in the Act. F, enhance fiscal monetary collaboration. Provide a legal framework for effective collaboration of fiscal and monetary policies. In the area of agriculture and food security, the following recommendations were also adopted. 1, encourage local industries by identifying strategic commodities to be based on regional and state comparative advantage. On page 13, you also have, it continues on page 13, so you have addressed issues of land tenure systems in Nigeria by encouraging state governments to create land banks for agricultural investment. 3, give incentives to manufacturers of farming equipment to manufacture or assemble them locally. 4, promote commodities exchange by making available to them on hire or lease basis or through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. 5, deploy private partnership to invest in cold rooms to reduce post-harvest losses. 6, increase significantly the total arable land under cultivation from current 34 million hectares in partnership with state governments. 7, recapitalize and restructure the Bank of Industry with a view to bringing in private sector players. 8, prioritize development of critical rural infrastructure such as roads, using Sukuk bonds, reactivation centers, and off-grid energy solutions via green bonds as part of measures to reduce post-harvest losses. 9, strengthen agricultural research institutions and universities with appropriate frameworks developed for the commercialization of their research findings and produce. 10, improve insecurity across Nigeria's agricultural investment through a national legislation for community policing and security that empowers farming clusters and associations to ensure security in their communities. 11, provide smallholder farmers with access to credit, input, modern farming techniques, and extension services to increase their productivity and yields. 12, encourage the adoption of mechanized farming techniques and technologies to improve efficiency and productivity in agriculture. 13, strengthen extension services to provide farmers with training, information, and technical support on modern practices, pest management, etc. In conclusion, the persistent trend and the fall of the naira underscore the urgency for proactive measures. The findings from the session illuminate the multifaceted factors contributing to the current challenges. As this report indicates, a collaborative effort between the executive and the legislature and between the fiscal and monetary authorities is imperative to mitigate these risks associated with the potential hyperinflation and the continued depreciation of the naira. We are convinced that the implementation of the recommendations contained in this report will go a long way in bringing down inflation, strengthening the naira, and stabilizing the economy. Indeed, the gravity of the situation demands collective commitment to implementing these recommendations and forging a path towards economic stability.
Let me commend the Joint Committee for a very well done job. This is a very exhaustive and comprehensive job. Mr. President, I want to also say that this report should go beyond the usual passage that we will do here. This report, after the adoption by the Senate, should be implemented. And I'm using the word implementation very purposefully, Mr. President. Mr. President, if you look at page 12, distinguished colleagues, 12D particularly, where the committee talks of rapid social safety net interventions, providing interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of economic challenges. Today, this is our life, and almost everyone is affected in one way or the other. So, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I want us to look at the recommendations in the perspectives of those that need immediate implementation, those that will be medium term, and those that will be long term. The immediate are critical because we need to survive first to go to the medium and the long terms. Mr. President, our relevant committees, for example, on this, food and transportation, particularly food, our relevant committee, and here will be the Committee on Agriculture, I don't know which of the two, and probably our Committee on Economic Planning, should be able to sit down with relevant agencies of government on how they intend to provide the food that Mr. President had set up a committee to provide for our citizens. Mr. President, it is important that we keep tabs on this particular item, because from what we see around and what we feel, what we hear, things are not so good for citizens. And the executive side is trying to do something. But if you look at the debate, Mr. President, many will tell you that even what we think we have in the silos in stock may not be up to that figure. And that means that we have to look for much of the food that we need for our people elsewhere. Whether we go to the market and buy, or whatever it is that we need to do, Mr. President, we must provide food for Nigerians at this point.
The President directed that food should be made available to those in need from our strategic green reserves. And I think it's very important Well, that is very commendable. It's commendable. We commend Mr. President for doing that. What is important here is that the relevant committees of the Senate should follow up and make sure that everything is done properly. Moving to show that the food is released as the grains are released as directed by Mr. President, and follow up on all aspects of the exercise. The state governments will also follow suit. They should also go out there and procure grains and distribute to those in need. This crisis or the problem we are facing the solution does not rest on the shoulder of the federal government alone.
This arose from the inability of the previous governments to take some actions, okay? To take some actions or take some decisions. As it is today, the decisions that have been taken recently by the federal government, if properly implemented, will set Nigeria on a sustainable path for growth.
Going forward, I think the National Assembly must remain steadfast, create capacity for itself, and therefore, when things like this arose, some of these things arose out of our inability to do the needful, out of some expectation that has not been met, is because sometimes the party position. We take party positions regardless of the national issue. We take ethnic position regardless of the national issue. We take regional stand regardless.
The government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligation of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement over a period of 40 years. We must be bold to investigate those things and see how we can cut down this obligation. If we continue to carry these obligations on the nation, we will not be able to go anywhere. Secondly, Mr. President, the foreign exchange management policy, which they have recommended here, I think on my own part that the major problem is supply of foreign exchange. The measures I saw here are all measures that are medium term and long term. There is no short term that is effective. This morning, somebody saw me around the bank and told me that he's ready to buy dollar 1,780 naira. 1,780 naira. I looked at him. I said 1,780. He said if I have now, he will pay in the bank. This measure that we are talking about will be a measure that will arrest this continuous increase. Boosting oil production. We know that when you boost oil production, you earn additional revenue in foreign exchange. It will help. But when will that happen? Look at what happened there yesterday. The EFCC raided the Bureau de Changes at Zone 4 in Abuja here. That is a sign of somebody who is acting out of desperation. There's no physical policy anymore to rein in these things from the office, because the CBN ought to put in measures that will immediately have spillover effect on the markets.
African countries, on their own volition, subscribe to the Maputo Declaration that urges all African countries to devote at least 10% of their budget to the agricultural sector, in view of the fact that agriculture accounts for 70% of our employment in Africa. It accounts to about 30% of our GDP, and also for the purpose of achieving food security. African countries on their own suo motu agreed that 10% should be devoted to the agricultural sector, which is termed the Maputo Declaration. But it may interest this distinguished Senate to note that since that declaration, the highest we attained is during the presidency of the late President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory, when we are able to attain about 2% of our budget being devoted to agriculture. I have done my own statistics. This year's budget, we have less than 2% that is devoted to the agricultural sector. So, Mr. President, distinguished senators, if you want to achieve the gospel of diversification of our economy away from oil to agriculture, and also achieve the much needed food security, then we have to walk the talk by deploying the much needed resources to the agricultural sector.
Talking about EFCC going to arrest some bureau de change operators. We are actually practically operating a system now in which if it's those who are completely uninformed about monetary policies that buy and sell exchange rate under the tree that seems to be determining the real exchange rate. What the bank refers to as market means try to balance supply with demand. This is the policy that has crashed the Naira. I asked the question when it concluded this paragraph with a particular sentence. How far these measures?
Sir, you have 1 minute remaining. 1 minute remaining.
Do we moderate the demand for forests? The market will not moderate itself. The state has to moderate that demand by identifying some non-essential items that can easily be produced here and prohibit those items from being imported. We have to be specific. We will try to reduce demand. How?
1 second remaining. 1 second.
We must understand that we have relegated Naira to the background. Everybody is talking about dollars, and dollar is what is causing the problems. We must, Mr. President, it might be a difficult thing to contemplate, but it has to be done. What has to be done is that we have to stop the use of dollars in Nigeria. Once you do that, Mr. President, everything will begin to take shape. And let me tell you what has happened. In Nigeria, we must make it compulsory for the use of Naira by anybody in Nigeria. So if even the sale of oil, the sale of crude oil must be done in Naira. Anybody who is coming to Nigeria as a tourist must come here with Naira. Yes. By the time you make it compulsory for people to come into Nigeria with Naira, the need for Naira, the demand for Naira will become prevalent in those countries. So they will go to their banks to buy Naira to come to Nigeria. That is the only way you can.
Thank you for that patriotic suggestion.
My name is Shoaib Afolabi Salisu. I represent Ogun Central. In order to put my comment in perspective, and I won't take more than 2 minutes, Mr. President. On page 12 of this report, this very beautiful report, it says in one day, FMDQ on Monday, January 29, the rate of Naira to a dollar was moved from 8.91 in one day to $1 to 1,348 Naira 63 kobo. On page 12 of this report. That was on the 29th of January. The event that was being reported here was held on the 9th of February, 11 days ago. The rate of Naira to dollar was about 1,500 or thereabout. Yesterday, the 19th of February, somebody came to my office and said the rate is 1,740. Just a while ago, as we speak now, the rate of Naira to dollar is 1,810. Before we conclude this debate today, the rate of Naira may have moved to 1,900. What does this suggest? We're in a state of emergency when it comes to management of our economy, something must be wrong. We might have had good intentions, we may have good policies, but if Naira moves on the 29th of January from 891 to 1,300, and on the 9th of February when the committee met with the management of the economy and it was 1,500, yesterday 1,700, as I speak 1,800, then we need something different to come. My suggestion is that this Senate, if the only thing we preoccupied our mind with now are the two issues of security and the hunger in land, we will have discharged our responsibilities. I therefore want to suggest that this Senate should constitute an ad hoc committee of experienced senators that will cut across two things: the geopolitical zones, to be sure that every geopolitical zone is represented, and the relevant committees of the Senate. They should have the power to invite and consult with those who know about the management of economy outside the executive. We need to get alternative views, alternative opinions. We need to get input aside from those who are in government on how to manage this economy. Otherwise, before we resume, or tomorrow on Tuesday, the rate might have gone to 1,900 or 2,000.
Simon Lalong again, representing Plateau South. Mr. President, distinguished senators, to me, I will say I stand with a heavy heart today because of the surrounding events that are happening in the country. Some of us are those who traverse from the executive and run to also this place. I agree entirely with the conclusions of the committee on this issue, and also agree with some of the proposals that we are in an emergency situation. Emergency situation is like you see a house being burned by fire. And the principle is that if fire is there, you don't decide which kind of water to quench the fire. Both the dirty and the good water will be used. You will first quench that fire before you move on to deciding whether it is good or bad water. Number two, the fact that hunger, I agree, does not know tribe. Hunger does not know religion. When there is hunger, the entire thing is about anger. And in that kind of situation, when you get to a stage, it's difficult to contain. That is why some of the principles, because I moved from labor to this place, if some of the agreements are signed were implemented within time, we will not get to this place. I know the content of those agreements with the labor. If those agreements were discussed or were implemented timely, we will not get to this stage. Because most of the things that we are seeing today were all some of the things that Mr. President envisaged. And he said, as soon as we continue with implementation, it will reduce the pressure on the economy. Yes, people can now talk about interpretation. People can talk about economy in different perspectives, both the academic and the non-academic. I always believe that in situations like this, let us embark on practical approach. For me, the practical approach is that let us not be seen to be treating this matter with levity. The executive, federal executive is doing their best. But with this kind of motion, I think that there must be state of emergency, like somebody said. But my own concept of state of emergency should be that why can't we quickly convene a stakeholders meeting about this, recommend a stakeholders meeting to discuss the practical aspect. Because some of these practical aspects in addressing this issue will go beyond what we see as economic synthesis, and of course my good friend Wadada will also bring. But we're talking about practical realities, the local approach. In that kind of stakeholders approach, the common man, the worker, the ordinary man will be able to see that kind of solution. And until we address this kind of solution, we will not go back to issue of monetary policy. That is when we will now have time to talk about monetary policy. Because part of it is, we are talking of agriculture, like my friend from, my colleague from Benue said. We are talking of agriculture. You move to Niger, there are large portions of land that federal government, yes, land belongs, the custody of land is in the hands of the state. But the federal government can make an approach and take over for public policy certain portions of the land and start production of certain crops if we think that can be of help. Security is all they need to deploy to that place. If you go to Plateau, for instance, everybody knows that there is no state that produces potatoes like Plateau. Just like Benue produces yams. You can't get potatoes. Potato is very essential. It is not only mere food, but it's also medicinal. Today, we have a very big crisis in part of Plateau. That is the area that produces potatoes and serves Nigeria. If we really want to make an emergency, part of the security is that I saw that they said they want to establish a barracks. When will they start building a barracks that will address that kind of situation? Is more deployment to allow and escort the farmers back to their farms, they are farming and they're coming back. Otherwise, Mr. President, I know that you would like to eat potato. You are not going to get imported potato. By the end of next year, if there is no potato from Mango and Bokos, you will not see potato in Nigeria again. No, situations like this will require serious situations. I wasn't, yes, I am part of those that just saw the motion for the first time, yes, but the deliberations, like I said, brought out by seasoned experts. The Senator Abiru is a good banker, and they brought out this within a short time. So within a short time, let us look for short measures quickly, so that the man outside will know that something good is being done. Even if it's not good enough, he will know that it is an uncommon approach.
Are you true? Okay, thank you. Please sit down. Distinguished colleagues, I will start by commending the Committee on Finance, National Planning, Agriculture, Appropriation, and all the committees involved, banking and other financial institutions, for the fantastic job that they've done for the Senate. I'm sure a lot of Nigerians were not even aware that the Senate had taken proactive steps by setting up this kind of joint committee to meet with the economic management team of the federal government to discuss ways and means of tackling the current economic situation, and particularly ensuring food security and making sure, and also ameliorating and reducing the sufferings that Nigerians are currently going through. So I'm excited with the report. We'll look at the recommendations, and where they are not far-reaching enough, we can add additional recommendations. But most importantly, will be for the various committees to ensure monitoring and oversight that what has been agreed upon, each and every item agreed upon is implemented. And over and above that, things have moved since you last met on the 9th of February. So it's important that you know that you still have to meet again. The situation is evolving on a daily basis. You can see a lot of sponsored protests here and there, but those people are not aware. Most of those sponsored protests are not aware of the kind of efforts being made by this Senate to tackle the situation, together with the joint management team of the federal government of Nigeria. There is no father that wants to see his child sleep in the night without food, with a stomach rumbling. So we must provide. That's why I said we must not limit our discussion to, oh, we will not import food, we will not do this. Wherever we can find food to put on the table of Nigerians, we shall do so. It's an emergency situation. Like the Senator Lalong pointed out, it's an uncommon situation, which has been exacerbated by many factors, from COVID-19 to insecurity, to the inflation, to even what Senator Abiru pointed out, the ways and means of 30 trillion, so that put so much pressure on the Central Bank of Nigeria and left a very big gap in the financial situation, so that if this government that inherited the situation tries to fill the gap, it means people will not eat, salaries will not be paid, nothing will be done until the gap is filled. We have taken it and we must move on.
What is happening currently in Nigeria is not something that is happening in isolation. It's not only Nigeria that's facing this kind of economic challenge.
Please repeat that, because and use your campaign voice.
I said it's not something that is happening in isolation to Nigeria. It's something that has international dimension. The world economy is not in its best shape as we speak. As we speak, the United Kingdom, the economy of the United Kingdom is in recession. They are in recession as we speak. The price of goods, commodities, everywhere in the world has risen. Everywhere. In the US, name it, anywhere, everywhere. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria. The Russian-Ukraine war, the Middle East crisis has created a situation where prices of goods and commodities all over the world has gone up. So what is left for us here is to look at our own problem and try to surmount these problems. And that is exactly what we are doing. Let's anybody not, we should stop thinking that, oh, it's only Nigeria. No. Yes, we are facing challenges occasioned by what is happening internationally.
And I must say that unverified report has it that each of the state governments in the last few months have received additional 30 billion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service outside their normal allocations, from the Federation account, outside their normal allocations, to assist them in ameliorating the food situation. So we believe that every state government should utilize the funds so received towards ensuring that food is available in the country. So the state governments have a lot to do. They are closest to the people. And I don't want to mention local government because most local governments are controlled by the state governors. So my belief is that if the state governments do what is needful, then the local governments in turn will only be involved in sharing to make sure that these things get to the people. But we must not overlook the fact that Nigerians are not going to be interested in stories. Nigerians want to see action. The quasi-fiscal measures totaling 10 trillion, of which the anchor borrower program is a major part, should be further interrogated by the committee with a view to plugging loopholes in future development finance activities of the bank. Well, this anchor borrowers program was an item that the Senate intended to look into. But if you are using this recommendation to take over the investigation on your own, those in support of the recommendation will say aye. Those again say nay. The ayes have it. That means you are authorized by the Senate to look into the anchor borrowers issue as a joint committee.
Mr. President, you have mentioned now, we are in one of the most difficult situations in this country. And the essence, constitutionally, of having a Senate is to provide stability in circumstances like this. We have people that know better than some of these people
that are holding forth for the government now. The chairman of the committee is here. He has reached his climax in the banking sector before he came here. He is an experienced, and he was a palmsec. You were a former governor twice. We have several individuals here that are talented. Who? Oh, okay. No, but distinguished colleagues, this is serious. Why Senate, even historically, was established is to provide stability, not to be under certain circumstances, try to dress the wound and ask the patient to go. And tomorrow when you open the wound, it is near the bone. Before you know, you have to cut off the leg. And after that, maybe you have to take it up. The situation is cancerous. So, the Senate should look at this situation again, critically. Unfortunately, the president of this country was a member of the parliament in 1992. And I'm sure he's looking up to these hallowed chambers for a solution to some of these problems. So let us not shy away from it. Let us look at these issues holistically and properly. And even if we have to get some people outside, because what it seems now is that people are just wallowing in a problem and they will drown all of us. So I suggest that we look at the issues, and the experts that we have here are even enough, not to talk of if the Senate has the right to get experts outside. We need to do this quickly because you can see our people are running out of patience. And we need to be serious when we come to discussion in this chamber because people are watching us. If we are not looking at this problem seriously, you'll be surprised, God forbid.
Yes. No, not to stop, to give me a chance to explain. Let me say that even your unspoken words are even stronger than the spoken words. The proposal by Senator Yaya that we look at the recommendation 1 again, that there are issues that seem to be joined together that ought to be separated. That, for instance, the issue of these 30 trillion ways and means, the obligations, he's saying that we should not wait for securitization for 40 years. That's one. 2, he's saying that most of these monies were given to state governments as at between 2015 and thereabout, when the oil price reduced from 100 to. No, I'm coming. And that's, he said state governments collected most of these obligations were actually the repayments are due from state governments, and they have not been accounted for. That's one. And 2, and then further, that there were a lot of intervention funds, such as the anchor borrowers programs and others, that led to these ways and means, and that these are things that we need to look into, whether they were properly utilized. So he's looking at 3 angles to this first one here. And so I think we should take a second look at the prayers so that we can amend the prayers. Number 1, Senator Alero wants to even give a further explanation before you amend.
And in addition to also the loans given to state governments, we also have loans given to manufacturing sector. Some of these companies that took this loan, they have not returned it. We have colossal amount of money given to the banks, and this amount runs into trillions of naira. So we need to really interrogate this. And these course, distribution companies, they were also given money by the CBN. So this money need to be returned to CBN in order to get out of the wood. I believe if we do this, it will help the economy to improve tremendously. So I am in support of the prayer already proposed by Senator Yahya Abdullahi and supported by Senator Ali Ndimbe.
So we should begin the amendment of
For information, Mr. President, each state government in 2023 was given 18 billion naira at once. Some of the governors that benefited from that 18 billion naira are here. I'm sure Governor London can confirm that.
And they did not, and they did not repay the money by the time they came to the Senate.
2015, when the government was in recession, the excess crude account was in operation. So instead of sharing $2 billion, it was decided that $1 billion should be given to the governors then, and the repayment will be from the proceeds of the $2 billion to be shared. But I agree that there were a series of repayments that were done for some states, but I know there are some states that did not repay. For 2023, there were a lot of money that was shared to state governments as shock absorber. That was a grant, and that was not repaid. The source of money, nobody knows where it came from. But the major source of this 30 billion, which was approved by this chamber at the time, was from the funding of our various budgets. You don't want us to say, but these budgets are still running. Supplementary 2023 is running. 2024 is running. 2022 is running. So we should find a way to harmonize these budgets to stop running in such a way that we can contain the quantum of money supply into the system. Whatever the CBN governor will say here today, he doesn't know the extent of money that are going into the system. I know so many people in this chamber will not say it, but let us harmonize that one to reduce the quantum of the ways and means that is in circulation. 3, there are also other funding of other programs of government, you know, like the anchor borrower, like so many other initiatives that were done by the central bank, which are through ways and means, which have been categorized to be irrecoverable. So no matter how you want to write them off, it's either you collect them back, if it's anchor borrowers from the farmers, if it is industrial financing from those you have given those monies, or make it in such a way, like doctors say, like a grant, but over a period of time. Yes, yes. So I agree that a special committee should be set up to look at this one in particular. You know, not that we will sit down and be covering the fence and be protecting ourselves, no, so that the truth will be known about the embodiment of all this 30 trillion and how we will properly take care of it.
We look at the special committee to interrogate, investigate, and report back to the Senate on those so-called intervention disbursements, and then and ways of even getting back the disbursements. Then you mentioned that some of the monies were also grants.
The only thing that was authorized by this August Senate or National Assembly, or was utilized as part of our budget, was less than 1 trillion. Is 891 billion or so. which was the supplementary appropriations, but the entire money was spent before it was brought here for approval. It was spent before it was brought here for approval. It was because of that. You spend a lot of money like this and our roads are bad. Our roads were bad. Look at the chairman of the committee was here. Then 819 is 819 billion that was now brought as supplementary appropriations, and it wasn't even spent. It was later that it was amended again when you were the Senate president. That's the only thing. That's the only thing that goes as part of the budget. I mean, of spending authorized by the National Assembly. So it wasn't part of. They were all spent before they were brought here. So that like I say is.
Okay, there is a means where money is expended outside appropriation, and that before the totality were brought here, that the monies had already been expended without the knowledge of Parliament, and that and therefore the Parliament still has a right to take a look at what the monies were actually used for.
No, remember, distinguished, as the GS said, what this chamber approved was 819. And we said that the other monies that has been spent cumulatively to, was it 20-something trillion? That the details should be provided. It has never been provided to date. This committee or whatever should find out what happened to the money. And some people must be held responsible, or at least they should come and explain to this Senate what they did with the money. Now it's time that people are looking for their money anywhere. Where is that money? That should be the big question.
If some people spent money before bringing it to the Parliament for approval or appropriation, where did they get the money they spent? Because they spent money and they came here to look for approval over money they have spent. Now it's not an obligation again. It is classified as obligation, 30 trillion. This debt overhang, Mr. President, is responsible for the problems we're having. This 30 trillion debt overhang, which nobody says he knows the detail, how they spent that money. Outside 809-something billion, which this Parliament, this Senate approved. 800-something billion, they approved. So about 20-something trillion, they knew nothing about it.
Older senators who were in the last 9 Senate are saying is that the total amount of this 30 trillion were brought before them for approval so that the records could be set straight. But however, that they left the caveat that yes, we can approve this, but we want to see the details. And that up till now, the details have not been provided. That the only detail provided is the one contained in the 819 supplementary appropriation of 2022, which is the 819 billion.
Right of approval only. It doesn't have the right when money has been spent for you to rectify. We don't have the right to rectify. We only have the right to approve. Check the Constitution.
Senator Goje.
Thank you, Mr. President. They legalized the 22 billion trillion that was given to us for the waste and means. We passed that one, but it doesn't mean we cannot investigate. We ask for details. Details were not given to us, so we can investigate how the money was spent. It's our own right, but we have already legalized the spending by passing. No, we have legalized it by passing in this Senate, but we can still investigate. And that's what we are saying. But I think, Mr. President, Since I am on my feet, protect me, Mr. President. Since we have almost agreed that we are going to set up a committee, all those details will be done at the committee level. So let's go ahead and set up a committee to investigate all those things.
Senator Ndume, you were there when the Ways and Means were approved.
I was not there. I was not there.
But the Senate passed it. It was part of the parliament.
Okay, sir. Check. I was not there. Check the record. And as I said, number one, wait now. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot approve illegality. What they did was illegal. The Senate doesn't have the right. Let it be on record. I was not there. I was not there. Check the record. I was not there, but you were there. But I was not there. I was not there. I was not there. Go and check the record.
Well, my name is Mustafa Habib, representing the people of Jigawa Southwest. I think I have the floor.
I want you to know that Sir cannot remember being there when the thing was done. Okay.
Mr. President, the easiest thing you do is set up this committee to interrogate this issue, because there should be no holds barred. Everything should be made available. Everything should come to the light, so that Nigerians will know what has happened. And it is in your own interest, in the interest of Nigeria, that these things, these facts are made available. And if need be, the actors should be at the consequences of their action. We shouldn't protect anybody. We are in a very serious situation in this country now. Mr. President, don't waste time. Please set up this committee to investigate this issue.
Please do not quarrel. You see, somehow when I kept hearing Ways and Means, and the senators have been grumbling that they were not aware of the details of the so-called Ways and Means for almost 29 trillion. I knew that a day will come when the Senate will insist on knowing the details in these Ways and Means. So what has come up with the current economic situation we have found ourselves, Senator Alero, please, with the situation, the economic marasmus that we have found ourselves today, I think it's important for us to know that government is a continuum. Government is a continuum. So whether the Senate, for purposes of clearing the record, approve it or not, we still have a right. Yes, we have a right to know. We have a right to know the details. We have a right to know the details. Am I right?
Excuse me, please. Order. Mr. President, it's good I make a clarification. I understand it. Mr. President,
so Ways and Means, even though there are two words there, Ways and Means, those words are the things causing confusion now. The approval or otherwise. Are you going to address it? Do you have the details? Because what the senators are saying is that they would like to know the details of what the monies were used for. Am I right? That's what the senators are saying. You that is going to explain. Do you have the details? Chairman appropriation. Did you appropriate for the Ways and Means? Did you appropriate? Did you appropriate? And he's saying that even though the money was spent and later approved en bloc with a caveat that the details should be provided. Senator Ndume is saying details were never provided. And even went further to say he was not part of it. But that is not important because once the Senate forms a quorum, the Senate has formed a quorum. Approval was given with a caveat that details shall be provided. But now, distinguished Senator Barra Jibrin, Deputy Senate President, himself was the chairman of appropriation. So please explain whether you have the details.
Now, when you have this kind of situation, it could be due to an emergency. It could be due to emergency. Now, that was the, it is expected if the executive of government and the legislature are on the same page, particularly where the government has majority in the Senate or in the National Assembly, it is expected will always collaborate and assist the executive government in the case of emergency. And when those requests were brought here, we knew they were done due to certain situations of emergency. Now, we said, yes, we are going to pass it. In fact, but why did we even put it together this way? 23 trillion. They said they were because of certain situations that were urgent. We said, now, okay, we are going to pass it, but bring your details later. Bring your details later. And it was a collective action by the Senate. And that was done. Even today, if President Tinubu brings in...
please, the President Tinubu will not bring 30 trillion ways and means. We are talking about 30 trillion ways and means. We are not talking about... I can't rule the Deputy Senate President out of order. We're talking about 30 trillion ways and means, not what President Tinubu can bring. This Senate will not rubber stamp anything that we feel is not in the interest of Nigerians. And that's the reason why we are discussing. Am I right or wrong? Those who are in support of what the Senate President is saying, say aye. Those against say nay. So the DSP stick to the issue.
So we are open to investigation. And there was a caveat at that time that we're going to investigate. The details must be provided. So we are waiting. Anytime the Senate feels that we should go to investigate that, we investigate that. So for one now to say, what happened then was a collective responsibility. And it was done in the interest of the nation and in line with our collaborative stance with the executive of government.
Saying what you did at that time has put the nation in more mess economically. And therefore, because of the current economic situation we have found ourselves, that there is need for us to look at the details and to know whether they were rightly spent. But then there is somebody that must make a statement on this issue. Senate President Emeritus, dismissed Senator Ahmed Lawan, just say a word so that we can go into the next issue.
There is nothing that the National Assembly that makes laws on them that cannot look at them and consider them. If there were expenditures wrongly done in contradiction to the provisions of the Constitution, the National Assembly can look at the expenditures, and if sanctions are needed for unlawful or wrong or unauthorized expenditures, the National Assembly can provide the sanctions. That is one. Secondly, Mr. President, what the 9th National Assembly approved or ratified in terms of ways and means was not 29 or 30 trillion. It was 22, but there was 819 billion to attend to deal and address very serious infrastructural dilapidations that we had across the country. So it was not 30 trillion. It was 22, and then of course the one we had made it almost 23. So if we have a ways and means that is 30 today, that means something happened. between then and now. And it's for the National Assembly to find out what happened. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, nobody in this chamber should suggest that we shouldn't look to anything that we feel is in the public interest. But let me say this very clearly. What Nigerians want today is food. What Nigerians want today is food and security. This belongs to the medium term or long term action that we need to take. How are we going to provide food for Nigerians and protect their lives tomorrow or from today? This report talks about it. Mr. President, let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's consider it necessary to look at what happened in the past. But we are in the present, and the present is so unpleasant. And we have to act very, very swiftly.
We are saying that the expenses that were not explained, the expenses that we don't have details about, put us in the indebtedness that we are seeing today. The expenses that we don't have details put us in the indebtedness that we have today, and therefore has affected even the ability of government to provide essential needs and services for the public. That we need to look into those things. However, that what is facing us today is a current food situation, food crisis, immediate crisis. So we need to look at what we can do in the immediate to put food on the table of Nigerians.